Strength training myths, video number 7. A method has strong lifters, or a gym has strong lifters. I should train just like that method or gym says. That's the myth. I'm Dr. Mike Israetel for Renaissance Periodization. Let's dig in to this myth and make sure we get the right stuff out of it and not the wrong stuff. We're going to talk about the claim being made specifically. I'll bring up actual specifics. We're going to talk about what success by a gym or a group of people or training method actually tells us. We're going to talk about what their success may not be telling us or for sure doesn't tell us. We're going to talk about what the best approach is if you're presented with very successful methods, seemingly, how to best go about doing them if we're not going to be copying them wholesale. So, claims. For example, this is the kind of claim we're talking about. The Bulgarians produce tons of champions. Bulgarian weightlifting is legendary in the late 80s, so I'm going to do a Bulgarian split. Okay, seems like fine reasoning, but something's kind of missing. A super popular one from about 10 or 15 years ago is West Side Barbell. West Side has the most world records, so I'm going to do West Side because obviously they know their shit. Some truth to that, something may be missing as well. And generally, the myth here, or the idea, which we'll say is at least in part mythical, is that when a gym or a place or a group of people is getting really great results, you should be copying their training processes so that you get those results too. And a lot of times the gyms that come up in ascendancy, the ones that talked about most on social media, have the most high profile lifters breaking records at the time, they change, right? And as they change, so does the fraction of the population copying them. Back in, between, I would say, 2000 and 2008, like, if you were a powerlifter, West Side was it. You either copying West Side or people thought you were some form of fucking stupid because clearly they were the best and onto something really special. And then later it was like Konstantin Konstantinov's kind of stuff. And then later, there was eras of a bunch of like the best raw lifter coming up and everyone wanted to know, what does this guy do? I want to know what this guy, or this gym has 3 top guys. What do they do? And it's always looking for that extra special spice. There is something to that, but there's also something not to that. So let's get into that. What does success tell us about an individual or a method or a gym when they're getting a lot of success? It tells us that they are onto something for sure, right? And whatever they're onto, how their training is, and it might not be that they're onto training, we'll get to that in a second, but whatever they're doing in totality and their training in specific isn't so bad as to just be ruled out of consideration altogether. For example, West Side training may not be ideal for raw lifters. I think a lot of people sort of start to catch on to that. But it's not so bad as to make people so weak that they're never represented among the top 50 lifters in America or something like that. If West Side was a gym with balloons and Bosu balls and pink dumbbells that went up to 5 pounds, it doesn't matter how much gear they took or how much gear they put on their bodies, they would just never amount to shit. So fundamentally, if a gym is successful or a person is successful, whatever training they're doing at least isn't awful. But you also know they're doing a lot of other stuff that for some reason are doing or being other stuff, we'll get to that in a sec, that's making them successful, but you can't quite be sure what part of that is the training. Why can't you be sure of that? That's point 3 of what success doesn't tell us. When people are successful, it is fundamental attribution error, statistical fallacy, or sort of misguided approach for us to assume we know what part of the multifactorial inputs are actually responsible for their better strength. A lot of these things contribute at the same time. Some of them go at cross currents to each other. Here's an example. When folks are successful, when you see strong people, let's say at a strong gym, okay, just a lot of people from that gym or from that association or something, really just super, super strong. Maybe some coaches producing, a lot of athletes producing that are super, super strong. You think, okay, it's the way the coach is training. Maybe, but here are some other possibilities. First, the genetics of the population in general that is being trained can be above average. Okay, I don't know if you guys have ever been to Bulgaria. I haven't, but Russians think Bulgarians are strong. Like in general, like those memes about like Russian woman fights bear, Bulgarian woman fights like a fucking werewolf or some shit like that. Bulgarians are just fucking stout fucking people, man. They're fucking, it's just, you don't want to run into them in a street fight or anything else. Like you start with Bulgarians, You apply some hard training, they'll be fucking amazing, right? Mark my words, as Nigeria's economy continues to improve, and hopefully it will for the next 20 or 30 years, you're going to see the development of more of a leisure class like we have in America. It's not really a leisure class, true middle class, that are going to have more time to devote to sports. Nigerians will start winning at all kinds of sports because Nigerians are fucking elite, genetically gifted gods. There's all the world people, and then Nigerians are right here. You're going to wonder, there's going to be a gym somewhere in, Nigeria and Lagos or something that's going to produce like 3 top 10 Olympians per year in bodybuilding. You're going to be like, what are they doing over there? Maybe some cool shit, maybe some stuff to really pay attention to, but maybe they're just fucking Nigerian, right? There's a thing to that, okay? The population itself that you're considering is important, but it gets more complicated. Recruitment, okay? At the zenith of West Side, Louis would personally invite some of the most gifted lifters from across the United States to come stay at Westside, train at Westside, be Westside, break records for Westside. Do Westside methods have merit? Fuck yeah, of course they do. Do they have their downsides? Of course they do. Would the lifters have gotten strong everywhere else that they trained? Yeah, totally. Did they get really strong at Westside in part because they physically just were transplanted and moved to Westside? They would have gotten just as good somewhere else. In many cases, that's probably true. Now, did Westside push a really hardcore mentality, push hardcore drug use? Of course, and that definitely helped. But starting out with guys that squatted 800 before they ever showed up to Westside, it's fucking sweet. Why does your gym in Cleveland, Ohio, with 3 old ladies training, have only one guy that squats over 400 pounds, and Westside has nobody squats under 600? Well, they didn't come there by chance. Those people aren't just from Columbus, Ohio, where Westside is located. They're from all over. Recruitment's a real big deal. So this happens a lot in bodybuilding, for example. Oh man, this guy's a top coach. Right on. Well, when one of your guys wins the Olympia or places top 10, your ability to recruit or attract high-level talent skyrockets. And all of a sudden, you get inquiries about people or by people that are just already really fucking good. I'm watching this happen physically right now with Jared Feather. Jared Feather, before he got his pro card, he trained a couple pros, especially IFBB pros. He for sure did, and he had great results with them. Literally the week after he turned pro, he got an order of magnitude more inquiries about can people train him. And this was from IFBB pros, who it makes sense in their mind, if they're pros, they're only hiring other pros or above, or the coaches that coach them. And if you're not an IFBB pro, you have to kind of look down and you're like, good luck. But when you're on their level, they're like, oh, wait, you're on the level and you fucking super smart sciencey guy. You know what the fuck is going on. You prep other people. You're really good. Come help me. But that all essentially means does Jared Feather really know what he's doing? I for sure think he does, but other folks in that industry may not know a ton about what they're doing, and their training methods may not be that great. But when, even by random chance or genetic freakiness, you had a guy place top 10 in the Olympia or something like that, you're just going to get a high level of talent. High level talent does high level talent shit. They're fucking good. And then it turns out that that's just what ends up happening. And that, yeah, it happens in the bodybuilding world a ton. It happens in the strength training world all the time. Number 3, drugs. I'm not going to belabor this point because you have to be 12 years old to understand what the fuck's going on. But, Westside is known for unreal doses. People have left Westside before because they couldn't handle the drug doses, okay? And that happens not only to Westside, but many other gyms, strength gyms, bodybuilding gyms, you name it. It's a thing. So when you're deifying this one particular athlete that you think is amazing, you're like, oh, I want to know what his training method is. He's just the only guy who happens to have the kind of genetic composition that allows him to shoot 8 grams of gear a week and not die. And that's why he's super good with pretty good genetics and unreal gear tolerance. How do you know it's not that? How do you know it's the training method? You don't, right? Which is why we're laying some skepticism here. Another factor, nutrition, recovery, and lifestyle diligence. So one of the things about Bulgarian training centers, and in fact about Russian training centers, is when the Olympics or World Championships were coming up, all the athletes would live essentially dormitory style in a training center. They got massages. They got all their food made for them. They had no other chores, nothing to do except 2 things, train and recover. And that's it. Now, maybe their methods were really sweet. Turns out the Bulgarian method was kind of fucking stupid. Google Max Ada Bulgarian method, and you'll get infinite number of webpage hits of Max describing, he's one of the best weightlifting coaches in the United States, probably the best, describing, and he did the Bulgarian method for years, studied under the guy who more or less invented it, Abajev, lived with him physically, and he'll tell you why it's not the greatest method in the world as a training method. But look, like let's talk about Bulgaria real quick. Genetics and population in general, fucking pretty sweet. Being a Bulgarian is awesome. Recruitment, well, the Bulgarian National, Training Center recruits all the best weightlifters from all the little clubs in Bulgaria, so amazing. Drugs, they took all the drugs, and nutrition, recovery, lifestyle diligence was like basically as good as it could possibly be. I mean, you physically have dick else to do except get massages, eat food, take naps, sleep 9 hours a night, and lift weights as hard as you possibly can. That shit works for everyone, okay? And if you're looking at like, it was the fucking max singles. Was it really though? Russia produced just as many championships, except they almost never did max singles, but they had all the other shit in place. So it makes you wonder, right? Another one, number 5, and this one's really gnarly, bit of a dark side. Survivor bias, okay? If you make a training program, which is a bench press program, it relies on accentuated eccentric loading. So basically, like, you load more than your 1 max onto the bench bar. You have serious spotters. You try to resist it crushing you, and then they take some weight off and you press it on the way up. Does a training method like that work? In context, yes, it's very powerful. It can make you very strong. The problem is a lot of eccentric overloading done too frequently parses lifters out into 2 groups. The genetically elite, especially injury risk-wise, that don't get hurt and go on to win bench press worlds in the IPF. And another group which tear their pecs off and just get hurt and no one's ever seen them again. It is my understanding that as soon as you have a major rupture of the pectoralis tendon, you never bench properly ever again. Like, you never go back to benching what you used to. It just never happens. The repair process just is not that good yet. So when you're looking at guys, you could be like, oh my God, the accentuated loading team or gym or training method has produced all these fucking crazy champions. I want to try it. Hold on a sec. You may not survive that process. What if I told you had a 50-50 chance of either benching 600 pounds or tearing your fucking pec off the bone? I don't know, man. 50-50 is rough. Like, I like benching 600 pounds as much as the next guy, until I wake up from that dream. But 50-50 chance of having a permanent deformity, I don't need any of that shit, right? And survivorship bias, to use the Bulgarian example, is fucking huge. Like, a lot of people just couldn't handle a Bulgarian training center thing. A lot of them just got hurt. And when you got hurt in a Bulgarian training center, yeah, they tried to fix you up a little bit, but someone replaced you in the varsity spot for your weight class. And then if you didn't recover properly, you were just kind of kicked to the wayside. It's a fucking communist government. You're just a cog in the machine to them. So survivorship bias is nasty. In fact, the Bulgarian system was not intentionally designed this way, but what it ends up being is a weeder system, a weeder program. Not Joe Weider, but WEED, that kind of weed. It's like a biochem class in college. If you want to be a doctor, you got to pass that shit. And half the people that try don't pass it, and probably good because they can go do other stuff and maybe they're talented in other ways, but sure as hell isn't a biochem. And we want the best doctors. We need to weed out the people that just can't handle super complex biological concepts. Same way in Bulgaria, in that training method, like, if you couldn't survive the volume and intensity, which is fucking obscene, then you were just gone and goodbye. So it was a huge survivor bias issue, and that's just how it worked. The thing is, it's fine for a national, mildly immoral, but fine for a communist government to sort of put the tip of the spear of their best athletes like that. It's a fine strategy. What about if you're choosing? Like, if you're free to choose your own training strategy, which everyone watching this video pretty much is, why would you choose a weeder strategy? You don't want to weed yourself out. You want to give yourself the best chances. You want a long-term development strategy. It may not be one of these. And lastly, and we got to be a little bit skeptical here, is perception. Okay, do folks really have a higher rate of champions, or are they just good about the PR for the champions they do have? If you have one major champion at your gym or your training method and some other people that are pretty strong, if you leverage that champion enough, they do tons of YouTubes, podcasts, appearances, training videos of other lifters, and they bring a couple of other not as strong people with them, and they're sort of around, there's Instagram buzz, it can be like, man, that one gym in fucking North Carolina, whatever, I'm just making shit up, they got fucking tons of great guys. And if you ever sit down to think about it, like, yeah, they have that Andrews guy, and I guess that's kind of it, huh? But like, because they do their PR well, it could seem like, man, this is a real fucking monolith. And the gym itself or the training method may have its own Instagram page and have lots of followers because that one lifter, you're like, man, they're really doing something like that one gym. And you think, about if that one guy gets hurt, they're fucking done. So you bought these training programs from them or copied their training programs when really it was just based on one guy. Another version of this, which is a little bit more underhanded, unfortunately, is when Westside at the end of its zenith, for many years after, possibly still to this day, Louis Simmons will say like, oh, like we have the most champions. We have the most champions. Except they have the most champions in equipped lifting, which almost no one does anymore. And they have almost no or no champions in raw lifting. And that's all of lifting now, or 99% of it. So when Louis says like, we have the most squat world record holders and our lifters all squat over 900, like in equipment they do, which is super impressive, but not the same thing as squatting 900 raw. And also it's like you used to have all the champions. Good PR can carry your gym a long time, even after the point of which its training methods have been shown to be not as great as maybe some others. So there's a lot there, right? Taking all that together, what is the best approach? Because we just leveled a fuckload of skepticism, maybe even cynicism, at the idea of success. However, there is a lot there. First, you should always be learning elements of an approach, not copying it wholesale. If you like the Bulgarian approach, that doesn't mean you only do the snatch, the clean and jerk, and the back squat and front squat, or even snatch, clean and jerk, and by some accounts, only front squat. You don't just do that every day, 6 days a week to a 1 rep max, and that's it. What you can do is take the element out that, higher relative efforts and higher relative intensities, that is to say, trying really hard and going to a max, and also not just a rep max, but a 1 rep max, seem to have an element perhaps that makes people really strong. So currently I do like an average of sets of 5 and I do it maybe twice a week. What I could do is sets of 2 or 3 times a week, but a little bit less volume to make up for it. That makes your current approach, which you know is good, which you know is sustainable because it's currently not fucking you up and it works somewhat, it makes it more Bulgarian. Try that and see if it works. And if it works, maybe you can make it even more Bulgarian and then find out that that fucks you up and gets you hurt. So you go back to some kind of happy medium. Elements are great, not wholesale. When you do take elements out of a successful gym's philosophy, which you should be doing, which is why it's a good idea to pay attention to successful stuff, because you can know like, oh, wow, like they're really maybe onto something. Let me play with this element. When you do actually employ these elements, don't expect a revolution. Always and everywhere, for non-beginners and non-genetic freaks, an alteration of your training method will result in marginal improvements in your gains. There may be few other statements that I think are more important for folks to hear that are in their beginner, intermediate phases and have high hopes for their strength careers. Tons of people watching this channel, no doubt, are going to get fucking super strong, and that's awesome. But hopefully, I wish someone had told me this shit back in my early days, is when you find that training philosophy that clicks much more, you're going to gain maybe 10 pounds on your squat every 2 months, as opposed to having gained 5 or 7.5. There is no training method, or I'll put it more technically, there is wildly unlikely to be a training method that takes you from no gains or 2.5 pounds on your squat every 2 months to one that goes like to 40 or 50 pounds. People always think like, man, those fucking Bulgarians, if I just do that Bulgarian method, I'll just be Bulgarian and everything will be great. Probably not. But look, if you're used to gaining 5 pounds every 2 months and now you're getting 10, that's fucking awesome. That's doubling your gains. Yeah, it's only 5 pounds more every month. That shit adds up. If you expect that kind of good, decent, but marginal improvement, look, you go a little Bulgarian, you add a little this, you take away a little of that, you alter your shit, and 3, 4, 5 years in a row, these alterations keep your rate of gains essentially almost at your beginner rate. That's amazing. Versus if you never made any alterations, it kind of goes like that, and then it sort of mostly gets asymptotic, mostly flatlines. It's definitely good to make changes. Just don't expect them to be this crazy revolution. Say, oh, fuck, that didn't work. Back to the drawing board. Maybe it worked, but just a little bit. That's fine, and that's super realistic. Lastly, and I kind of just hinted at this, don't just copy shit. Develop your own methods. Yes, play with methods and ideas that you see all through Instagram, all through YouTube, all the different gyms, lifters, associations, etc., and even different countries. But try them one at a time integrate them in a way that you think is the best way to integrate them, the thing that makes logically the most sense based on what you know and how your body responds. So like, if someone's doing a lot of singles, maybe add in a few singles. Don't just replace your program with singles, because probably a stupid idea. And at the end of the day, you're going to get a combination of methods that's best for you for your best development, which may not look like somebody else's program and is almost certainly not going to look like your favorite lifter's program who you initially got some of those methods from. That lifter has the program, but that program is tailored to their genetics, their lifestyle, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Your program can look pretty similar, but should be different because it's tailored to your differences, because you're not the same fucking person. Folks, thank you for tuning in. See you next time.